This is a great question. How do we know that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was the Satan?
All right, let's see it.
First, the word, nahash. Nahash as a noun means serpent, yes. But the verb form of these consonants means to divine or soothsay. And the adjective form means brazen or bronze-like. And these are characteristics that are described of the Satan in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 38 as well.
No, they're absolutely not. And there are two critical problems with this claim. The first is that neither Isaiah 14 nor Ezekiel 28 is actually about Satan. Isaiah 14 is about the king of Babylon. Ezekiel 28 is about the king of Tyre. That is explicit. They would not become identified with Satan until the Common Era. Some scholars say it was around the time of the New Testament. I side with those scholars who suggest this identification would not occur until the 2nd century CE, after the New Testament had been completed. Second main problem is that none of those words actually occur in either of these chapters in describing the figures they're condemning. Not the noun form, not the verbal form, not the adjectival form. I don't know where this creator is getting this idea that these words are used to describe the king of Babylon and the king of Tyre, but it's absolutely not coming from the actual words that are in the text.
So looking at the full context of what we know about this serpent, about Satan, is one, he's probably a seraph.
There's not a single word in all of the Bible that suggests Satan was identified as a seraph.
Which is a kind of angel, which is described as almost like a fiery serpent.
So there's not a single syllable of the Bible that identifies a seraph as an angel. That is also a post-biblical innovation. And additionally, there are seraphs that are fiery and there are seraphs that are not. The text has to describe them as such. And if you would like a very accessible, wonderful discussion of the nature of the seraphim, you can't do better than Esther Hamori's God's Monsters, which was recently released. I highly recommend you check out this book.
He, in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, is described in ways that align with these other kinds of phrasing.
None of that is true. In Isaiah 14, the king of Babylon is described as someone who claims to be divine and claims to be trying to exalt himself over the stars of God and the very throne of God, and as a result will be cast down. And this is about the hubris of foreign kings who claimed to be divine. Ezekiel 28 is about the king of Tyre, and it talks about the king of Tyre being in Eden, the garden of God, but the way it describes the king of Tyre only fits with the human in the Garden of Eden, not with the serpent, but also doesn't really match the story as we find it in Genesis 2 and 3, because it talks about walking around among all these stones. It talks about the mountain of God, which is nowhere mentioned anywhere in Genesis 2 and 3, but the places where there is overlap, it talks about the king of Tyre being created in the garden, about being perfect until there was sin found in him. It talks about him being cast out from the Garden of Eden. These are all things that have to do with the human. And so in Ezekiel 28's telling, the human in the Garden of Eden is representative of all humanity. But it's obviously a different story from what we have preserved in Genesis 2 and 3, and there are absolutely zero details that indicate the king of Tyre is being identified with the serpent in the Garden of Eden. So none of this is accurate. There would have been no such triple entendre understood by ancient Hebrew hearers of this story, nor are any of those details actually found in the story. There's absolutely nothing having to do with bronze in Genesis 2 or 3, or in Isaiah 14, or in Ezekiel 28. I have absolutely no idea how this creator thinks that that detail is relevant. There's also no soothsaying going on anywhere in the story of the Garden of Eden. And also, the serpent didn't whisper lies into Eve's ear. The serpent told Eve exactly what would happen, and that's exactly what the text states would happen explicitly. The serpent says, "You will not die. You will be like the gods, knowing good and evil. And the story has God themselves say in Genesis 3:22, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. And they simply did not die on the very day that they ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Now you know. Part 2, we'll talk about how the New Testament furthers this.
All right, let's see that too.
Part 1, we said, here's some Hebrew wordplay that denotes, the serpent is the Satan.
Part 1 wildly misrepresented the Hebrew of this story as well as of Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28.
There's also New Testament references in Revelation 12 and 20 that very explicitly say, this is Satan.
All right, let's see it.
Check out what Bible Project here has to share on this.
These visions explore the message of the open scroll in greater depth. The first one reveals the cosmic spiritual battle that lay behind the suffering of the 7 churches under Roman persecution. It's a manifestation of that ancient conflict that began in Genesis chapter 3. The serpent, who represents the source of all evil, is depicted here as a dragon.
So Revelation 12 describes a dragon who has 7 heads, who is also that ancient serpent who stands by the seashore, who shoots water out of its mouth and has control over the waters. This has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the serpent from the Garden of Eden. The only connection is the notion that that ancient serpent must refer to the primeval serpent from the Garden of Eden. But there's another ancient serpent described in the Hebrew Bible, who is also described as a dragon, who also has multiple heads, who also is associated with the seas and the waters. That's Leviathan. We can go to Isaiah 27:1, where it refers to Leviathan as that twisting serpent, that fleeing serpent, the dragon that lives in the sea. And the Greek translation of Isaiah 27:1 is the only passage in all of the Hebrew Bible where we have the same 2 words being used to describe the dragon in Revelation 12:9. Drakon and Ophis, serpent. And that is describing Leviathan in Isaiah 27:1. What about the multiple heads? Well, Isaiah 27:1 is actually quoting a tradition that is also found in a Ugaritic text from about 500 years earlier, where it says that Leton, the Ugaritic cognate to the Hebrew Leviathan, is that twisting serpent, that fleeing serpent, the dragon with 7 heads. Isaiah 27:1 doesn't make reference to 7 heads, but Psalm 74:14 makes reference to Adonai crushing the heads, plural, of Leviathan. And we have Leviathan popping up in a few other places within the Hebrew Bible as part of a primeval creation account that involves battle with this primeval sea monster. So all of the details from Revelation 12's description of the dragon and the serpent fit with Leviathan. Only one of the details also happens to overlap with the serpent from the Garden of Eden. Revelation 12 is not about the serpent from the Garden of Eden. It is about Leviathan.
In Revelation 12 here, there's actually also some parallels with Luke chapter 10, where Jesus says he saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven.
So Luke 10:18 is not best understood as a reference to Isaiah 14. It's best understood as a reference to the Greco-Roman period Jewish traditions about the fall of the head malevolent angel and then the rest of that angel's followers after them. We see this most clearly in the Enochic literature. For instance, 1 Enoch 86 has Enoch say, I saw a star fall from heaven, and then other stars follow after. So this is the idea of the dragon using its tail to sweep a bunch of stars from the heavens down to earth. And this pops up in a few different ways in a few different pieces of literature associated with that tradition. So this is not about Isaiah 14. This is not about the king of Babylon. This is about the Enochic tradition of the fall of the angels and the fall of the head malevolent angel, whether it's Mastema or Shemi Hazah or Samael or whatever you want to call it.
Satan's battle is not just in that heavenly realm, and we as Christians have some work to do in continuing the fight until Christ comes and finishes the job.
You have work to do better understanding your Bible as well.